How about scientism? You hear this when you go to college. There's no truth in anything but science. No truth in anything but science. What's the problem with this claim? So how would you refute it? If someone were to say there's no truth in anything but science, how could you show that this can't be true? Yeah, simply ask the person the question, is that a scientific truth? Can you go in the laboratory and prove that? No, that's a philosophical claim. You can't prove that by science. Science is built on philosophy. You see, all data needs to be gathered, and all data needs to be interpreted, and who does that? Scientists. If there were no human beings, would there be anything known as science? No. Science is a method of inquiry that human beings use to discover cause and effect relationships. And human beings have to gather the data and then interpret the data, and they do that through philosophy. After they gather the evidence, they go, what's the best explanation for this evidence? That involves thinking. In fact, science is more done in the mind than in the lab. Now, very closely related to scientism is something we're calling humism. Not humanism, but humism. David Hume, another philosopher who died in 1776, and Hume said, only self-evident or empirically verifiable claims are meaningful. What's the problem with this claim? Yes, is that claim self-evident or empirically verifiable? In fact, Dr. Geister, when he was going through his graduate program many years ago, I think it was in Chicago at Loyola, had a professor who really bought into this claim. And he said, you got 20 minutes to do your critique of Hume. He said, Dr. Geister said, it won't take that long. So he got up there and he said, David Hume says that only self-evident and empirically verifiable claims are meaningful. Since that claim is not self-evident or empirically verifiable, then it's not meaningful. So it's self-defeating and therefore can't be true. And then he sat down. Now, the professor was not pleased, because the entire premise of the entire course had been upstaged by the very first presenter. But that's what you can do with the love of Jesus. You guys know who this guy is? Bart Ehrman, who teaches at UNC Chapel Hill. Wrote the book Misquoting Jesus, several other books, Skeptical of Christianity. In fact, he started out, he says, as an evangelical and ultimately is now an agnostic leaning toward atheism. And he says the reader determines the meaning. In fact, he was at SES in 2009 to debate Mike Licona. Ehrman had kept claiming that when the New Testament writers wrote down the manuscript evidence, when they copied it, they actually changed it, because to read and copy down the New Testament text is to change it. That was his claim. This is also called deconstructionism for you philosophically minded folks in here. And Tom Howe, one of our professors here, raised his hand during the Q&A and said, well, Dr. Ehrman, when I read your book, when I read it, am I changing it? Right? Ehrman doesn't think that his claim applies to his own book, just the Bible, right? In effect, what Tom said, should I determine the meaning of that? And so Ehrman knew he was in a self-defeating quandary here, so you know what he said to Tom? He said, Dr. Howe, I'll be happy to send you an email about this to explain it more. And Tom said, when I read your email, would I be changing it?